Tales from a Professional Nerd. My name is BryanCPSteele, and I'll be your nerd today and any other day that you watch one of my silly little shows. Hi, everybody. Today is an interesting topic. We'll get into some stuff in the second half when it comes to the Week in Bryan. I don't expect today to be a very long episode, just for the sheer fact that something came up in conversation to create this topic, and they were like, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. And with the conversation that we had, it rolled into some kind of deeper philosophy and things, and sometimes that's what I like to do on the channel. So yeah, I just figured that would be a kind of a fun thing to do. So without further ado, the topic of the day is you are the chosen one, whether that is a mistake or a masterpiece. So a little bit of background. So the conversation stemmed from we were talking about a friend who ran a campaign for a long time, and the campaign world is awesome. We love it, but a lot of the campaigns themselves tend to revolve around one character, whether it's like one particular player character is sort of the reason everybody else is there, the main character syndrome kind of thing. And two people in the conversation, one person was like, "Yeah, I love games like that where you're right, you're being part of the epic story and you're part of this guy's entourage and whatnot." And then there was another person at the table that said that they really didn't care for that because it made it feel like that character was destined to survive to the end, wasn't going to be be actually challenged, and that all the rest of the players, or all the rest of the player characters, were kind of superfluous, that they were co-stars, if you were. And I sat there and I was thinking about it, and I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do it, but it did beg the question as to a lot of fantasy stories and a lot of ensemble casts tend to revolve around a particular person. A lot of sci-fi. The Matrix. You get the Chosen One. Literally Anakin, the Chosen One. You get the hero, and then like the people who are with him, and that works as a story. Obviously, there's a reason why it's a trope, but in a role-playing game, it can end up putting too much importance on one person, and potentially take the limelight away from the other people at the table, making them feel secondary or are unloved by the plot, so to speak. I've said lots of times before that when you're GMing a table or building a story, it's fine to do spotlight games where like this particular game or this series of 2 or 3 sessions are all focused on like one person's background, or really like it's giving the limelight to that particular person. And that's always that works out, and it tends to be pretty cool as long as you kind of spread the love. Chosen One plot lines, they tend to really, every session is that, if they are a player character, that is. I think that there's a way to do it. If you could question whether or not maybe them being the chosen one isn't set in stone. Maybe the prophecy around them, feed them a few tidbits of information that make them think that, hey, maybe there's another person that was born at that same time, or maybe one of the villains thinks matches all the same parts of the prophecy, or maybe they've done all the research and they go, I am just as likely a candidate of being the person that this chosen one. And that little bit of that little bit of doubt that you can plant in someone's head is enough to keep them from doing the whole, oh well, I'm obviously the center of this prophecy, so I'm untouchable, kind of deal. If you plant that doubt of, well, maybe you only think you're the chosen one right now, and then as soon as we kill you off, obviously you were wrong. There's ways to use it as a tension builder. There's ways to use it as good background, good narrative, and not just a focal point of, all attention goes on this one character. Oh, this guy gets the magic sword. Oh, this guy gets the audience with the king. Oh, this guy is the one that gets the key to the city. You know, I think that's where it can fall into the mistake category of doing the uh, this person can, will achieve all things without any doubt. Uh, there's a term that a lot of people use is Mary Sue or Marty Stew if it's a guy, um, where a character is basically their vehicle for all things. That he can do anything, he learns how to do anything, he overcomes all adversity. Yes, it might be rough at the moment, but he's going to make it through at the end. And while those are interesting tropes to explore in a role playing game, you really need to be challenged. You need to have some sort of question, some kind of uh, you know double guessing, second guessing yourself uh, before you go walking, taking that leap of faith or walking into that dangerous situation, because you you know you want to make sure that there's consequences for actions. And if someone really is being held up as the chosen one that will always be there, that's just basically the main character throughout the whole plot, um, that player will eventually figure out that that's the case. Something bad happens and they're whisked away by a plot device, or all arrows point towards destruction, except, well, the GM says, I guess you make it out in the nick of time. It ends up being that player will, even if it's subconsciously, they know that they can get away with pretty much anything because the GM needs them for their plot. And I think that is a negative place to find yourself in when it comes to creating a plot line. Now, I say that, but a good prophecy or chosen one stop plot line is awesome if that chosen one or that plot line or whatever is an NPC, because that puts all the player characters in the same degree of, we need to do all this to protect this person or to maintain this thing. They still have that challenge or call to failure. They've got that going for them, or going for the entertainment of the game. They're not automatically just assumed, doesn't matter, it only matters what this guy does. If it's an NPC, they know that it's less to do with that person's survivability or that person's life or whatever, and more to do with the decisions and the ramifications of what you do to try and get them to where they're going, get them to fulfill the prophecy, get them to their end destination, whatever, get them to their wedding, whatever the case may be. Whatever you do as your group, if the NPC is the chosen one, you feel justified in the things that you do. You really celebrate the big wins, and you feel like you are forcing that. You are pushing that awesome narrative through your decisions and actions. Think of it in the terms of like the Fellowship of the Ring. So arguably, there weren't a lot of, there was maybe one or two main characters, but in the case of the Fellowship, I would say the main character is probably Frodo Baggins, um, in the way that he is the ring bearer, he is the one that has to bring it to Mount Doom. He has a lot of like personal turmoil and things, And a lot of the characters surrounding him, while absolutely important, they have their super big moments. Everything that they're doing ultimately is to try and get Frodo in the ring to that mountain, including a split of party and distractions and all of these things. But that's a perfect example of, if I were running that game, there wouldn't be a player character that was running Frodo. Frodo would be an NPC. Everyone else would be the player characters trying to, or maybe not Sam, because if I knew that I was going to split them off at some point, I hate to split the party by, thousands of miles. But either way, the rest of the Fellowship, those are more like the player characters, where they are putting themselves on the line, sacrificing themselves, furthering their own particular goals and plot lines. But ultimately, it's about pushing that chosen one, Frodo, into fulfilling their destiny, throwing the ring in Mount Doom. Spoiler. uh, so again, I think as an NPC, a chosen one plotline is perfect. Uh, where it gets sticky is if the player character, if your chosen one is just unlikable, just a horrible person, a horrible person to interact with, or has no personality whatsoever, like it's just basically numbers on a page to the GM, because that means the players won't get very vested in that chosen one, and they won't feel, how can I put this? They will be less likely to care if something bad happens to them if that guy's a complete jerk. Now, there's nothing to say there can't be some animosity, there can't be some personality disagreements or whatever, but there's a line, and as a GM you can watch your players and figure out where that line is. The okay, we got to babysit you, we got to get you to this place. I'm going to keep using the Frodo analogy. All right, we got to watch these hobbits. All right, let's get them to Mount Doom. Oh wait, what's he doing? Okay. Oh, he got stabbed by a Morgul blade. All right, guess we gotta make a side trip. Like those were acceptable plots and side arcs and things, and entertaining for the party, and for the most part allowed them to get little wins along the way, and really set the stage for the big win at the end. What would suck is if Frodo was a complete just jerkbag the entire time. Like, I don't care, I hate him, elves are stupid, dwarves are dumb, humans are smelly, halfling power, like whatever the case may be. But if the chosen one is just like an awful addition, and the only reason you're doing this is because the plot tells you to, characters are less likely to go out of their way to have those good moments, to push themselves, to do the heroic thing, or whatever, to help further that chosen one's goals. You're more likely to be like, whatever, he's the chosen one, they're gonna be fine. Now, there's a caveat to that. If your chosen one is an NPC, you also don't want him to turn into, I solve all the problems, I do all the things because I'm the chosen one, I can do all the stuff. If you've got somebody who can, the Matrix, as soon as Neo, spoilers, as soon as Neo figures out that he's the chosen one and can like manipulate code with his mind and whatever, he gains these godlike powers, and at that point, the rest of the people with him can kind of check out. They're not really needed anymore because he's achieved what he's going to achieve, and then it's no longer the strive for success. It's simply just watching this NPC do all the stuff, and you don't want that either. You can be the chosen one without being the one that knows how to do and accomplish all things. The other thing I think is a fun and interesting way of playing with this is run a game with the idea of a chosen one. Give it a good NPC, so that way all the players are invested equally, and there's not one person doing all the stuff or getting all the stuff. And give them the first like 5 or 6 sessions, the first like chapter in your narrative arc where they fully believe, or where they absolutely believe this guy, he's prophesied. It has been prophesized that he is going to ring the church bells on the 14th and call in the dawn of angels to blah 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 blah, save the day, scour evil from the earth or whatever, and play it up that way, like really make it seem that way, really make it seem like that's a thing that's going to happen. He's got this divine protection. Maybe during combat throw a couple of attacks his way and make them fail spectacularly, but like weirdly or quirky, like some kind of almost supernatural force stepped in and changed it. Really push it home that this guy is gonna uh, uh, you know get to the place and do the thing and stop the bad guy. And then around session 6, kill him. Do something, wait for that perfect moment when the players do something silly, or where they've just gotten to the point where they're overconfident in what the NPC is capable of, and they let him go off and do the thing or whatever, and then very publicly, very grisly, and very permanently kill him. Because now suddenly your players are thrown into full turmoil mode. They don't know what to do. They don't know, oh God, did we stop the prophecy? Did we, is there now going to be a new chosen one? Do we need to look into this? Did we just start the apocalypse? Like there's so many, do we have to now, because he didn't get to do his thing, does that mean we have to, pick up the pieces and, we have to go stop the big bad guy before before this prophecy comes true, or whatever? Or let's go to the archives and find out what the second half of this prophecy is. This guy kept telling us that he's going to save the day, he's going to save the day, he's going to stop the big bad guy, but we never knew what would happen if he didn't. That wasn't part of the conversation, because you always assumed that he would. So there is definitely ways to make a chosen one plotline work as itself, or as a potential foil, or as a a red herring towards a greater moment. Or if you're feeling super super dark and grisly, do the same thing, but when he dies, the apocalypse does happen. Blot out the sun, everything is low light, monsters rise from the grave, like just do whatever weird stuff that signifies, this was bad, we shouldn't have let this happen. Now, I do see it does work both ways, where you don't want it that the NPC, the chosen one's death, is fully scripted all the time. Do it during a combat. Do it during, something where the players could have stopped it. Because if you do that scene completely as a narrative and you don't have any rules backing, yeah, your table should be okay with it, because everyone's communication skills should say the GM is allowed to narrate things. But it will feel more important if it wasn't just, if you didn't have it set up as a scripted moment. If it just happens naturally that the chosen one dies and the players are suddenly, brought to this realization of, oh man, what have we let happen? And that can create a very cool plot line in and of itself. So I guess my overall answer to that question is, it is only a mistake if it makes some of the players feel less important at the table than others. Again, a couple of sessions, great, but like as a whole campaign, you never want players to feel like they don't matter. That the only one that matters is that guy down at the end because he's got the magic sword. You never want that to happen. You want everybody at the table to equally feel like they're part of what's happening, and that if they were to be killed, lost, destroyed, whatever, that character's absence would be felt just as heavily as the main character syndrome guy. So I think that's definitely where the mistake part of that comes in. Um, the masterpiece part, like I said, I really do think that it can be a great story provider. It can be a great reason why players do things that maybe they wouldn't normally do. Like you might have a player that builds a character that is extremely focused on this one aspect, this one thing, and then you put your plot in front of him, and he's like, "Yeah, I would never do that. Yeah, I don't care. I'm not involved. I wouldn't get involved. Whatever." You know, have a player that's really just being obstinate about it, and if you frame it in such a way that's like, "Yeah, on an average adventuring day, you absolutely would never do this. You know, you don't care." But if there's just a slim chance that this guy is, in fact, the key to stopping the end of the world, you have to see the greater good in helping him and doing the thing rather than choosing to stand, you know, digging your heels and not do the thing on purpose because you're risking the whole world. You know, so there is weight to there's weight to using a chosen one plot line. There's weight to using the chosen one as an NPC, but there's also the risk of the GM coddling that character so much that the players believe that they are utterly untouchable, which then in turn you could use as a big switcheroo and then kill that guy off, and then suddenly the players are lost in confusion. Maybe they, if it happens publicly and they let it happen, you know, the worshippers of this prophecy or the people who believe this prophecy, you know, they start coming after them. They count them as enemies. You know, you didn't protect the chosen one. You know, there's definitely ways to utilize it in your games, but it comes down to the number one, in my opinion, like the number one mistake is turning a player character into the chosen one because everyone else at the table, even if they don't initially feel that way, you are automatically casting them as a co-star instead of a star in their own story. If that makes any sense. That's really all I have to say on the topic. I mean, I know, like I said, today was a short is going to be a short episode. I've got a lot going on, but I really just wanted to cover that because it was a really interesting conversation that we had, and it made me think of what, you know, how useful could that be, and you know, what are some of the pitfalls and dangers of using a chosen one plot line in a game. So yeah, I hope that was helpful. I know, like I said, it's a quick 20 minutes of conversation, but I didn't want to waste a bunch of your time with a bunch of great higher theory. I just wanted to talk a little bit about that topic and maybe get you guys talking in the comment section, get your opinions and things. I would love to hear. I'd love to hear both types of stories, but you know, both mistakes and masterpieces that use it. That would be great. If that's all you came for, you can go ahead and click off now, and I hope you have a fabulous rest of your week. You will not see a video from us next week because I will be at the Universal Trade Summit up in Fort Wayne. I am working the Evil Genius booth to tell people about some of the great stuff that we've got going on with that company in the following, you know, the following couple of quarters. So I will be back in September. So this is also your chance of getting your name in the Randominator for the August comment raffle. So make sure you do that as well. For now, just, you know, please be safe, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. All right, now that all those plot line only folks are gone, let's talk about the week in Bryan. So first and foremost, as I mentioned at the end of the first part of the video, I'm going to the Universal Summit next week, so I will not be able to record a video for next week, and then I'll tell you all about it on the week following. Plus, I've got some interesting news to share in that video as well. Yeah, on a personal level, things are good. I did some gardening the other day. Hurt my hip, my other hip. So it's not bad. I'm wearing my brace for it right now and taking some pain meds. So all is well. I got to remember that, I had a birthday last week. I'm 49 years old. Got to remember, I'm not as young and spry as I once was. So if I'm cutting a bunch of branches and ripping vines out of my fence, maybe do it in smaller chunks. But more importantly, looks good out there. So that's really all that's what I was trying to do. Um, Other than that, kids are back at school, or kid is back at school. One of them's graduated. Um, yeah, just going to the gym, trying to live life and not be hurdy ouchy because I'm old. Hobbying. No, I'm in that same category I was before. I've just had too much work stuff to do, not enough time to really get any hobbying done. Although I do see some spiking up here in my future pretty soon. I have a couple of models that I'm supposed to get done for a client, meaning that I do have to dust off the old brushes and get in there and do some more painting. Plus, the batch of kimchi that I made will be done fermenting by then, so it will be off of my hobby area. Uh, yes, I make kimchi, and I do a damn fine job of it, and I do the slow fermentation, but it requires to be in the darker, shadowy side of my studio in order to ferment, and it's almost done. I don't know why you guys care about that. Maybe you don't. My hobby is making food. Um, Gaming wise, so I've been playing a lot of Helldivers. Um, that's pretty much constant. Got a good couple of playtest games of Xeogenesis in that. I made a change to a rule that has come up a couple of times in the playtest for the org, and I think people are going to really like it. Um, yeah, I'm excited about that. Plus, started putting some real numbers to the page on the next faction, which I don't believe I can say what they are yet. So I'm not going to, but getting some work in on there. Uh, and yeah, I think that's. Oh, got to play in a D&D 5e Dark Sun, not the official one that's coming out next year, but using like the fan officials or the unofficial fan stuff that came out. One of my buddies is running a Dark Sun game where we're play testing some of the options and things, and um, had a good time. Almost died, but not because of damage, but because of exhaustion levels. Um, the the unofficial rules for the extreme heat of Athos uh, are probably too harsh. Um, they may have been written with a different rule set in mind initially, but the current rules for exhaustion and how fast they stack and how many times it's rough. It is very, very rough. And I almost died, but I didn't, and we'll see whether that trend stays here in a couple of weeks. Work stuff. I know this is always one of the longer things that I do, but it's because I work a lot. Like I said, did working on a bunch of good stuff for Xeogenesis. Did a couple of playtest tweaks for some stuff in Warzone. Um, Getting ready to start the actual playtesting of Shadesong. Speaking of, I'm going to have some playtesters here in the next 2 weeks. I'm going to probably grab some playtesters. I've got a handful of people that I know that want to be involved. If you would like to be a playtester for a new miniatures game with its own IP and the like, please reach out through one of my various channels, and I will put you on the list of playtesting this game, because here in the next month or so, we're going to put the core rules and the first two factions kind of through the ringer to get the client ready to start looking forward to putting together the rule book and all that stuff. So if you want to playtest something awesome by this guy, let me know. I think that's just about it. Oh, of course it's not. Uh, Stuff at Evil Genius is ramping up. We're getting some more art done for Intergalactic Heroes. I am finishing up a rewrite on an adventure, and then I am starting to dig in on. Can I talk about that? I think so. I think we know. Yeah, we announced the Valerian of the City of a Thousand Planets, so I'm going to get started on putting that rule book together. And I literally right before I started recording this, Dave and I had a fantastic meeting with a license. We'll call it a license, an intellectual property. Well, definitely an intellectual property. I'm not sure if I would call it a license, but either way, we we had a really good meeting with them and their marketing team and everything. And it sounds like very shortly I'm going to get to start putting together that. Um, More when I can talk about it because it's weird, it's wacky, and for a lot of people out there, it's going to be very cool. Um, Still working on Drashar stuff and yeah, just slugging along, making stuff, making games, answering a bunch of questions about Vampire Bound by Blood. Hoping that I'll get the call from Ghostfire to do the next installment. So I guess we just sort of keep our fingers crossed and keep on moving on. But I've got a lot to do always. Here pretty soon, I've got to have to start putting together the stat blocks and the outlines and stuff for my Gamehole Con adventures. Um, because that's gonna, it's only a month and a half away. So it's gonna sneak up on me. So yeah, I have a lot going on, and that's why I'm doing a short form video this time, just to get in here, give you some information, let you know I'm doing okay, and then let you get back to doing your stuff, and I'll get back to doing my stuff. So without further ado, um, just be safe. Wash your hands, get your shots, wear a mask if you have to. Don't like doorknobs. Just trying to leave every room a little happier than when you got there, because that's the important thing. Until 2 weeks, 2 weeks from now, hopefully I'll have something really cool to do for that video. But either way, I will see you in 2 weeks. Thanks for watching, and like, share, subscribe, do all the stuff. Uh, just be safe, have fun, and play some games, because I will. Bye, guys.